in this last section of notes, we're going to talk about some of the other endocrine glands in the endocrine system, and then also how do we maintain homeostasis in the body. Testes and ovaries are both coming from the gonads. Testes are the gonads found in males, and they produce androgens like testosterone, stimulating growth of the penis and testes. They're responsible for male sexual characteristics such as facial hair, underarm hair, and pubic hair. And it prompts the larynx and the vocal cords to enlarge, resulting in a lower voice, as well as promoting muscular strength. In females, we have the gonads, which are the ovaries, and they produce estrogen and progesterone. They stimulate growth of the vagina and the uterus. They're responsible for secondary sex characteristics, such as female body hair, fat distribution, and breast development. They're responsible for egg maturation and regulating the uterine cycle. If you look at the hormones, you can see that we have the testes over here and an ovary over here. And here's that hypothalamus, and there's the pituitary, and in the anterior pituitary, FSH and LH is produced in both males and females. It's just the way they interact with the tissue is slightly different. In females, FSH and LH will cause the secretion of estrogen and progesterone, and there is a feedback loop going on here. And this is what we have cycling to help with some of the secondary sexual characteristics, as well as the maturation of eggs and then the thickening of the uterine lining. And we'll discuss this more when we get to the reproductive system. Over here, you can see the FSH and LH is also produced, but in the testis, we have testosterone. And this is where we're seeing the stimulation of male secondary sexual characteristics, as well as maturation of the sperm. And we also have this feedback loop present. The next endocrine gland that we should discuss is the thymus. It lies beneath the sternum, and it's kind of lays right on top of the heart. It typically is largest when you're young, and as you age, it gets smaller and smaller. In fact, by the time you're in your 80s, it's so tiny it's difficult to find on an autopsy. This is where your T lymphocytes mature, but it also secretes hormones called thymosins that aid in differentiation of lymphocytes. The pineal gland is located in the brain. It secretes melatonin that regulates the sleep and wake cycle. And you've heard of melatonin, and this is something that you can take over the counter. It may also play a role in sexual development, but primarily it's about your circadian rhythm. And if you were to look at melatonin secretion, what you find is as you get closer to bedtime, when it starts to get dark outside, melatonin levels spike. This is part of what makes you feel sleepy and helps keep you asleep. And then as the light starts to come back out again, melatonin levels go back down, and then you start to wake up. In the wintertime, typically you will have more melatonin secreted than you do in the summertime, just because the nights are longer. One thing to keep in mind is melatonin is really affected by light. So if you were to shine a light on yourself in the middle of the night, like to look at a phone, or if you have too bright of a night light, it'll actually cause those melatonin levels to go down and make it difficult for you to sleep at night. Hormones that come from other tissues, things like erythropoietin is secreted by the kidneys to increase red blood cell production. Leptins produced by fat cells and acts on the hypothalamus to give a feeling of being full or satiated. Prostaglandins is a group of potent chemicals. They're not carried by the bloodstream, and they typically work really locally just on neighboring cells. They can cause smooth muscle contraction, really big impact on reproductive organs, and they have a lot of other roles in the body. Interestingly, ibuprofen and aspirin block the synthesis of prostaglandins. So lastly, we should just talk about homeostasis. And the nervous system and endocrine systems are important in maintaining homeostasis. The hypothalamus bridges the regulatory functions of both of these systems. And the nervous system is able to respond to changes in the external environment. And so what you find is the nervous system typically will have a much more rapid response, whereas the endocrine system has a lower response. And if you look at this image, you'll find that in every system of the body, we have an interaction here with the endocrine and nervous systems in coordinating and maintaining homeostasis. And that does it for the endocrine system, guys. Thank you so much for listening.